What's up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the show. Another solo episode for you guys tonight. And man, a few things to comment on. I guess I would have to say that the theme for tonight is, if I had to summarize it, corporate media lies. Now, that could be the theme for basically any night, but I tell you what, lately it seems especially bad. And I'll start with the the Kyle Rittenhouse case. It really is astonishing to kind of survey the landscape of public opinion out there and to see just how many people still think that this guy shot black people. There are people still saying that Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist. Now, there is probably more evidence, video evidence specifically, for this case than like anything I have ever seen in my life. Yet, we still have highly opinionated people tweeting out stuff, calling him a white supremacist, saying that he shot black people. I mean, it's just incredible. And then, of course, there are all sorts of other variations of lies about what happened. And it's just so clear that people, A, have not watched the actual footage, of which there is tons and tons from different angles, from different cameras, from aerial views, HD, not HD, with sound, without sound. There is more footage of this entire scenario than, I mean, it's kind of amazing, honestly, how much footage there is. And if you haven't followed the trial in real time or reviewed the footage and you've just consumed corporate media, you're probably not even aware of the full scenario of the case. And that's all by design, because they don't want you to know all the details, because they want to stoke division and stoke outrage. I want to read this tweet to you guys. And this is, look, this is a case that we have had all this information for since August of 2020. I mean, a couple days after the shooting, I remember reviewing, all of these details for the most part and being able to see, oh yeah, he definitely shot white guys. And I remember having a moment where I was, to be quite honest, I was like, phew, thank goodness. Thank goodness it was white guys that he shot. Because if it were black guys, they'd label him a white supremacist and there'd be even more rioting. Little did I know the corporate media would essentially lead the public on to think, nonetheless, that he shot black people. And even the president of the United States, the incumbent, future rather, president, candidate for the presidency at the time, Joe Biden, the senile phenom, he indicated or alluded to the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist. I believe it was even in one of his campaign ads. They were talking about white supremacy and cut to a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, remember, this dude isn't even 18 years old. He's a minor. And they're dragging him through the mud publicly, calling him all these names. And it's all based on lies. I mean, he shot 3 white guys. And again, we have tweets like this from a guy named Alex Cole. It's AC Newsatics. I guess that's a portmanteau of AC for Alex Cole, news for news, and then itics for politics. So that's clever. Good for you. This is what he tweeted out at the end of October, so just a couple weeks ago, and we've had this footage for over a year. He said, Kyle Rittenhouse is so lucky that he's white and only killed black people. ... I'm sorry, guys, but the judge is going to let this guy walk free. This guy, and he has quite a large Twitter following. This got, almost 300 retweets, over 1,000 likes. From this screenshot that I have, it could have been more, but I believe he has since deleted the tweet because, as you guys can probably imagine, he got ratioed quite heavily on it. But, I mean, here you have someone who's, even their Twitter handle is a portmanteau of news and politics. So presumably they're in the know, and they're still saying asinine things like Kyle Rittenhouse shot black people. Whoever you are, I don't know who you are. This is the first time I've heard of you. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. Do some critical thinking, do some critical reading. I don't know, grow a prefrontal cortex. I don't know, but that is just absolutely ridiculous, man. I mean, insane. And you're seeing it all over the place. You're still seeing people call this kid a white supremacist and still see people saying that he shot black people. There was not a black person involved. And in fact, I take that back. There was one involved. It was one black guy that ran up and tried to drop kick him in the head or stomp kick. I'm not sure which you would call it, but that's it. And then ran away or whatever. So that's the extent of the involvement of a black person in the Rittenhouse case. Here's another tweet from a guy named Tristan Snell. No matter what happens in the Rittenhouse case, the next step is a federal indictment for weapons and homicide charges. Because Rittenhouse, here we go, here's the catchphrase, crossed state lines. And his mother might be charged as a co-conspirator or accessory. Now, this was tweeted out yesterday, November 16th. We have known for a while now that, in fact, Rittenhouse did not cross state lines with a weapon. The weapon was in Wisconsin. He did not cross state lines with the weapon. His father lives in Kenosha. He works in Kenosha. He's got a bunch of family in Kenosha. He happened to reside on the other, on the other side of the state line, but he did not transport a weapon. That has been, it's the fact that people are still alluding to that. Once again, it's just as asinine as saying that the guy shot black people. And in an age when we have the knowledge of the world in our hand at all times, it's inexcusable to say stuff like this. It truly is sad and disgusting. He also said his mother might be charged as a co-conspirator or accessory. Well, we have also known now that his mother did not drop him off at the riots. So once again, just perpetuating misinformation. And here's the rub, all right? You guys probably know by now, if you've listened to any of my content or followed me for a little bit, that my Instagram account was removed recently, disabled, whatever the proper terminology is. And essentially, I was given no actual reason, but I can only guess because based on the content I used, it was probably something to do with posting one of many peer-reviewed articles that I've posted that show that the efficacy of masks is not what most people assume. The mortality rates and hospitalization rates are not what most people assume. The efficacy of the vaccines wane over time. All these things. I've shared a bunch of stuff that sort of is frowned upon by the mainstream narrative, but is supported by peer-reviewed science nonetheless. However, the folks over at Instagram or with the independent fact checkers, quote unquote, decided that although it was factual information based on peer-reviewed science, it wasn't the correct, it wasn't the narrative fitting factual information. So my account got disabled. However, you can have stuff like this where someone says a flat out lie that Kyle Rittenhouse shot black people, a flat out lie that Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines with a weapon, a flat out lie that Kyle Rittenhouse's mother dropped him off at the riots, a flat out lie from the president of the United States saying if you get these vaccines, you will not get COVID, verbatim, what he said, flat out lies. Where are the fact checkers? Where are the little notes saying fact check false on their posts? You don't see that. It's a very clear, very, very clear delineation between anything that is in support of whatever narrative corporate media, because again, remember our theme tonight, corporate media lies. Anything supporting their narrative does not get fact checked. Anything supporting something contrary to their narrative gets fact checked heavily, gets censored, gets disabled. The president of the United States lied through his teeth about the vaccines and said that you cannot catch COVID if you're vaccinated. And this is the guy mandating that OSHA enforce companies with over 100 employees to get vaccinated, operating on a false notion that they instill 100% protection. This is scary stuff, you guys. And once again, it's all perpetuated by corporate media. They don't get fact checked, but we get fact checked. I hope you see the theme here. It's us versus them. And that's not some nebulous us versus them. That's the corporate media elite ruling class. The the folks who are really, really grasping on as hard as they can to power that is slipping out of their fingers because of the decentralization of information. And this show right here is an example of that. All right. I mean, 15 years ago, you didn't have stuff like this. And they had a stranglehold on information. They had a stranglehold on the narrative. And despite the fact that we have incredible amounts of very good, objective, independent folks putting information out there, folks are still prescribing to these corporate media narratives because it happens to fit the story that they'd prefer it be. And that's why you saw this guy saying Kyle Rittenhouse shot black people. You see this other guy saying that he took a weapon across state lines. I mean, these are all just flat out lies. But I see it over and over and over. People just repeat it. It's like the telephone game, except across millions of people, and they just keep saying the same thing and pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. And when in fact, again, we have hours and hours and hours of footage showing very clearly. And here's another one. Even the prosecution, the state, said that Rittenhouse chased the first guy he shot. When, okay, as soon as you review the footage from the drone and from multiple angles, you see very clearly that Rittenhouse was being chased from the get-go. You know, another thing that you see pushed is, oh, he was just up to no good. He was down there with his gun looking for trouble. The kid had a medic kit. He had a fire extinguisher. He was cleaning graffiti. He treated lots and lots of rioters and protesters, helped them when they were injured with his medic kit. You even saw people saying, oh, see, he was wearing gloves to cover up the fingerprints. It's like, no, dummy. He was wearing gloves because he was treating people. He was wearing latex gloves because he was treating people's wounds. He did all that and took a gun with him to protect himself because, by the way, the majority of folks around there were carrying guns, protesters and rioters, as well as people protecting their property. If I was in that area, I would absolutely arm myself to protect myself. I mean, here's a kid who took it upon himself to go and help others, even what you might look like or look at, as those on the, quote, other side, right? He was helping rioters and protesters. And they're the ones destroying the property he's trying to defend, yet he's still helping them with their wounds. And when I say defend, I mean, he's just standing there to make sure nobody torches these car lots. But you don't hear that either. You don't hear that at all from the corporate media, and especially from the left-leaning corporate media. It's all, 17-year-old kid crossed state lines with an AR-15, went down there just looking for trouble. Couldn't have been further from the truth. Couldn't have been further from the truth. The kid was walking around with a medic kit. There's so much footage of him yelling, medic, medic, does anybody need help? And there's footage of him helping people with their wounds. And yes, he has a gun strapped to him. I mean, as does a ton of people, as do a ton of people involved down there as well. Look, when there's mayhem and when people are burning things and destroying things and assaulting people, if you're going to go in the middle of all that to help, it's probably a good idea to make sure you have some sort of protection. And as you see in this scenario, he needed to use it. So it's really disappointing. It's really mind-boggling, to be quite honest, to see all of this stuff still being perpetuated, being retweeted, being quoted, and people talking about it in the corporate media, when if you watched the trial, if you've looked at any of the actual footage instead of just taking someone's word for it, it's so very clear how all of this went down. And, you even had, what is his name, Gage Grosskreutz or whatever. I think I called him Gabe in a previous episode, but it's Gage. He even admitted that Rittenhouse didn't shoot his arm until after he had already pointed his gun at Rittenhouse's head. I mean, it doesn't get any more clear cut in terms of an argument for self-defense in this case. And they've already thrown out the gun charge because Wisconsin law allows you to carry a long gun if you're between the age of 16 and 18. So there goes that. I mean, but the problem now is that the jury feels intimidated, apparently, because you can hear people protesting outside of the courtroom. They're terrified for their lives if they don't convict this guy, probably. So, it's just a mess. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think that the defense is filing, or whatever the term is, applying for a mistrial because the prosecution had HD drone footage that they did not share with the defense until right at the very end, when the defense didn't even have time to incorporate it into their strategy. And then there was this screenshot, pixelated, zoomed in, AI altered single image that supposedly showed Kyle pointing his gun at the guy that was with Rosenbaum, the 6'5" guy who fired off the first shots, by the way, when they were chasing Rittenhouse. And supposedly it shows him pointing his gun at them, which of course really is inconsequential, to be quite honest, because he didn't fire a shot. They had already fired off a shot running behind him, but it's not him pointing a gun at them anyway, because if you look at it, he's right-handed. He had his rifle strapped with the sling in a very particular manner. It was very tight. There was only one way to manipulate it, to shoulder it as though you're right-handed. And in the image, if you believe that what it's showing is him shouldering and pointing a rifle at someone, it's the opposite. It's as though he were left-handed, and it looks as though it's pointing up. I think it's more like an artifact, and I think it's the sling across his back that kind of leads into just like some weird artifact on the image. I mean, it's all pixelated. The software that they used to actually modify this image to make it, I guess, more clear, or to zoom it in or whatever, it even says in the manual for the software that it should not be used in the court of law to present as evidence. It says that in the manual for the software that they used to create this image. The prosecution did. And once again, all of this is probably stuff you're not going to hear on CNN or MSNBC, or even, some of the more right-leaning like Fox News and stuff. This is stuff that you have to truly do some digging, review the footage yourself, look at the actual court footage, the live streams, because they will modify and edit it to make it lean one way or the other, which is just terrible. But yeah, so that's what's going on. And it's really sad that it even had to come to this. I mean, it's such a clear-cut case of self-defense. And in my opinion, there shouldn't even be a trial. There shouldn't be this much controversy over it. There certainly shouldn't be all the racial tension and racial divide that they're pushing when you have a white kid who defends himself against three white guys, one of which was yelling the N-word. I mean, and that was odd because you see this footage of this white guy, I think his first name's Joseph, last name Rosenbaum, who, by the way, was a convicted pedophile. He had anally raped several small boys. He had gone to prison for 15 years. So, stand-up citizen. I'm sure he wasn't the aggressor at all. I'm sure he wasn't chasing Kyle at all. Had just gotten out of a mental institute, had all of his belongings with him in a plastic bag, yelling the N-word, running around, telling people to shoot him. Told Kyle that he would kill him if he found him later on alone. Just unprompted, just told him that, along with the group of guys he was with. So, it's, again, when you actually review the totality of all of it, it's so very clear kind of what happened. But again, corporate media lies. They've got to keep us divided. They have to keep the tension between the people, because as long as we're fighting each other, they can get away with whatever they want. Also, it gets them ratings and gets them clicks, and they're a dying legacy form of media, so they'll take anything they can get. And I just hope more people can see this as time goes on. Another thing, talking about corporate media lying, I don't know if you guys saw NPR tweeted out, it's so terrible, man. So the Boston mayoral race, an Asian woman won the candidacy for mayor of Boston, and NPR tweeted out essentially saying, too bad it wasn't a black person, in so many words. So let me just pull this up. And again, this is an ongoing thing where it's just so exhausting that everything is made about race. I didn't get to see anything. There was nothing published about what is this woman's policies. By the way, first female mayor, first Asian mayor, and I don't know, where their subjective spectrum for people of color lies today, because the goalpost moves so often. But last I checked, Asians were considered people of color, but hey, I guess not enough, and they always just have to push more and more. They couldn't be happy with the fact that this Asian woman had won. So NPR, let's see, Boston mayor tweet. Let's see here. NPR slammed for calling Boston's first female Asian American mayor a disappointment. That's what it was, saying that it was essentially a disappointment because she was only Asian. She wasn't a person of enough color. She needed to be black. So it's just awful, man. I mean, it really is terrible. All of this freaking intersectionality and identity politics and all this stuff is just so exhausting, dude. The corporate media makes everything about race. I mean, look at that. White guy shoots 3 other white guys. It's about race. Woman of color wins mayoral race in Boston. Still makes it about race. Not dark enough. Needed to be black. Asian wasn't good enough. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. And they're just trying to sow seeds of discontent and divisiveness amongst the people by doing this stuff. Once again, how about we talk about her policies? How about we talk about what she's going to do for the city of Boston? How about we talk about anything except for the fact that she wasn't of enough color, right? Like, this is preposterous, man, especially because NPR pushed the Stop Asian Hate narrative so hard for so long. And now you just see them essentially just disregard an Asian woman who wins the mayor of Boston, calls it a disappointment because she's not a black woman, presumably. Or, I mean, I think they essentially said that in so many words. So once again, corporate media, just slimy, just awful. I mean, it truly is such a disappointment, man. I'm not a journalist, right? I'm a scientist by training. I'm an entrepreneur. I owned a business. I owned restaurants and bars, and I worked in the private sector recruiting for scientists and engineers. I'm a better journalist than these NPR journalists, quote unquote. And it's so sad. Like the bar has been lowered so much, and they're essentially propagandists and activists more so than they are journalists. And the people that truly lose are the American people who don't know where they can go for a quick, because hey, people have lives, they got jobs, they got kids, they got mortgages, just a quick place to get the news that they can trust. It doesn't exist anymore, man. It just truly does not exist. And the worst perpetrator of all of them by far is CNN. They're just disgusting. So what else is going on in the news? Oh, Mr. What's his name? Poopy Pants. Joe Biden, his vax mandate, remember the whole vax mandate that was supposed to go into effect on the 4th of December, that he was using OSHA to push on private businesses because, the the executive branch can't actually enforce that on the people. So essentially they're having private industry do their dirty work for them. Of course, based on a false notion that the vaccine somehow makes it so that you can't get COVID, which is, of course, false. Biden is a barely alive human. So anyway, that has been paused because OSHA has decided to essentially put the kibosh on it for now. Might have something to do with like 24 plus states are suing the Biden administration. Tons of businesses are suing the Biden administration, including the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's media business. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? They essentially deemed it unconstitutional or whatever. So that's happening. I mean, that's good news, but it's really a shame that even had to unfold that way, right? It's a shame that our leadership in this country is going to try to force a mandated medical treatment on all citizens if they want to keep their job. So just insanity. It's truly crazy to me just how much people have bent rather their standard of morality. I mean, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. It truly feels like we're almost living in a simulation at times. And I wanted to give an example of that. I was listening to Dave Rubin earlier, and he was talking about a scenario where his producer went to Bloomingdale's to get a shirt. And because he's, abiding by the rules, they're in California or what have you, he wears his mask in to the store, and he's around 30 minutes in there walking around looking at shirts and stuff, and finally gets his shirt, goes to check out, and they ask him for his vaccine passport before they'll sell him the shirt. They would not let him buy the shirt without the vaccine passport at the point of checkout. Mind you, he'd already been in the store for 30 minutes walking around. If he had COVID, he had definitely spread it all around by then. And this is how preposterous and completely non-logical, nonsensical all of these rules and mandates are. They let him walk all around the store, get the shirt, come to the cash register, and then you just can't give us your money unless you have your vaccine passport. So only at the point of transaction did they want him to provide his proof of vaccination, so he didn't get the shirt. But I just thought that was just such an insane story and so par for the course and indicative of what we have going on with this clown world of just broken brains. I think it's truly odd. I mean, Austria is now, talking about essentially taking unvaccinated people and making them go into these. I don't even know. Before I misspeak, let me make sure. Austria unvaccinated. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, they're making unvaccinated people quarantine. So unvaccinated people are not allowed out of their homes. Vaccinated people are. So here we go, guys. This is dystopia. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. It truly is. It makes me sad, man. It makes me disappointed in humanity. It makes me disappointed in my species. I thought we were better than this. I thought we were smarter than this. It's truly saddening and maddening at the same time. A couple other things. I wanted to talk about The View. So absolute garbage TV. I mean, The View is horrible. There's a reason it's called The View, not The Views. Even though they have multiple folks on the show, it's The View. And the worst part was recently, I say the worst part, but I mean, it's hard because they're always one-upping themselves. But they recently had on, let me pull up her name. Joy Behar. Yeah, Jedediah Bila, I think is how you pronounce it, or Billa. Apparently she was a former co-host on The View. But anyway, she's going back and forth with the ladies on The View. She is remote. They wouldn't let her in the studio because she's not vaccinated. She told them she has a medical exemption. Her doctor, as well as several other doctors that they conferred with, told her that she should not get the vaccination. However, she does have, I'm assuming due to previous infection, strong natural immunity, according to her. But anyway, the geniuses, the absolute shining beacons of intellect at The View told her that, I mean, they're essentially shaming her, right? They're saying, well, it's shown that the vaccines prevent hospitalization and death. And it's like, yes, we all know this. However, what is your case for mandating that for anyone to come into the building, right? Because essentially that's a totally different thing. If we want to talk about your personal health and your likelihood of hospitalization or death, Joy, you should probably lose some weight. Whoopi, you definitely should lose some weight, all right? But that's different. That's personal health, okay? The vaccine mitigates your symptoms. That's personal health. Now, if we want to talk about public health, if we want to talk about a reason you would mandate the vaccine to enter the building, then the vaccine needs to mitigate spread and stop the vaccinated individual from contracting the disease to be effective at all. in that context. And this is what Jedediah tries explaining to Joy Behar. She simply says the common knowledge at this point, I thought, that even though you're vaccinated, you can still catch and spread COVID. I mean, this is common knowledge. The average American who doesn't have a lot of time to read up on this stuff will probably tell you that. I mean, good Lord, just about every person I know knows a bunch of folks who are fully vaccinated who've gotten COVID after vaccination, right? So it's no secret that you can catch COVID when you're fully vaccinated. And that's all she's saying is she's like, well, it doesn't make much sense to require it to come into the building because even if you're fully vaccinated, you can still catch and spread it. And Joy Behar is laughing her off, telling her that she's wrong and says that she watches too much Fox News. Where has Joy Behar been? I mean, has her head just been up her ass the whole time? This is accepted common knowledge. Like, the only other person that I've heard say anything so asinine is Joe Biden, and he's essentially a blob of unfunctioning geriatric nothingness. And he thinks that you can't catch COVID if you're vaccinated. Never mind the fact he's leader of the free world. That's not scary at all. But Joy Behar is telling her that I don't even know what she's trying to say because she's laughing at the basic knowledge that you can't or that you can still catch and spread COVID if you're vaccinated. I mean, it's truly astonishing. I mean, I feel, once again, I just feel this deep despair for humanity. Like, I thought we were smarter than that. I thought we were better than that. And I don't know if Joy is truly just that unintelligent, just that stupid, for lack of a better word, or if she knows the truth and she's still pushing a lie knowingly, which would be even worse. And I hope she's just stupid because the majority of Americans are fully aware of the fact that if you're double vaccinated plus a booster, et cetera, you can still catch and spread COVID. We have conclusive scientific data from peer-reviewed articles showing that the viral load is the same with the Delta strain, or Delta variant rather, between vaxxed and unvaxxed. All of this is out there. It's common knowledge. And you think that folks who host a show like this, where they have a direct line of communication with the American people, would have a little feeling of responsibility to actually know the facts. But apparently these empty-headed hosts of The View don't. And it was just truly saddening to see. But once again, corporate media lies, folks. Corporate media lies. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, yes. One last thing. So Tim Pool, if you guys don't follow him, he's a phenomenal journalist. He is very objective. He, was a part of Occupy Wall Street, very sort of lefty in his leanings, and he has since evolved over time and can admit, when his ideas change or when he's wrong. And it's a breath of fresh air. He has a very active YouTube channel and podcast. He's putting out content every day. He's got a great team. They have great banter back and forth on his show. But anyway, recently Tim went on a rant, and I loved to see it because he's usually a very level-headed guy. And this was in regards to journalistic integrity or a lack thereof, as well as the journalistic institutions working with our intelligence agencies against other journalistic institutions, essentially. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. You all know if you've listened to my show, I think I've talked about it. He was raided by the FBI. They seized a lot of his personal items. They seized his cell phone and had access to all of his sources and information that was private to him and sensitive because he is a journalist and works on uncovering a lot of, very sensitive, very high risk topics. He's done a lot of very good work. And apparently what happened was the FBI fed information from James O'Keefe's personal cell phone or the personal information they gained through this raid. They shared it to the New York Times. The New York Times went on to publish it. Okay. Just disgusting. I mean, you have an American intelligence agency taking information from one journalist, from one institution, and giving it to another. That's about as unethical as it gets, man, and it's disgusting. So Tim Pool went on this rant about it, and it was beautiful. And I think, let me just see here, I think I recorded it because I wanted to play it for you guys. And it's worth hearing. It's a little long, but I wanted you to hear it. So let's see if we can get it. I'm just going to let it play into the mic from my phone really quick. So here we go. For everybody listening, I'm about to play Tim Pool's rant about this whole scenario with James O'Keefe at Project Veritas, the FBI, and I believe the New York Times. And if you're watching the video version on YouTube, you just see me holding my cell phone up to the mic, unless I might actually cut in the clip of Tim at this point. So here we go.
Adam Goldman of the New York Times, evil. We've got to stop playing these games. This is a guy who got privileged legal communications under the United States Constitution and our laws and norms. You have a right to legal counsel. And the guy at the New York Times gleefully published this from a rival organization. Why? They want this country to burn. They want power, and they will get it by any means necessary, and they will use the power of the federal government to do it. I am looking at all of you right now, and I am telling you this. The police will kick your door in and bash your teeth out the moment Black Lives Matter protests you. We've already seen it happen. You think this is a joke? James O'Keefe's legal privileged communications were just given to the New York Times, and Adam Goldman, with a smile on his face, published it. He doesn't care about this country. He doesn't care about our norms. These people are at war with you, and they will burn your life to the ground like they're doing to Rittenhouse and like they're doing now to James O'Keefe because you dare oppose their power grab. This is not a joke, and it is getting worse. And in the next 10 years, as we enter the fourth turning and it escalates, it is going to get worse. James O'Keefe is a journalist. The federal government stole his privileged legal communications and gave it to the New York Times, who published it with a smile on their faces. These people do not hold your values. They do not believe in the Constitution. The prosecutor in the Rittenhouse case violated the Constitution. They will do it again. They will do it more, and they will burn down your town, and the feds will protect them, and the police will protect them. Stop thinking the institutions are on your side. This country is being corrupted, and we are watching it every day, and it has gotten to the point where you need to ask yourself, will the police protect you when someone comes to your town and threatens to kill you? No. The detectives in Kenosha, the prosecutor went against the young man who was fleeing for his life. And James O'Keefe, an anti-establishment individual, and I mean that with respect, but he is outright just a journalist, is facing the boot of the authoritarian fascist government. And it will get worse, and it will happen to you because you keep complying. And you keep saying, but my kids need food. And now inflation is here, and there's food shortages, and your kids aren't eating. And the schools are indoctrinating your kids. Now we see a turnaround with Youngkin because the parents are standing up. But too many people keep saying, as long as I keep filleting the state and dropping on my knees for the far left extremists, I will squeak by, and you will not. The police will come to your home. They will kick your door in, and they will arrest you because the good cops have already started quitting. And like we saw in Seattle, the police arrested the man who was retreating from Antifa as Antifa approached him with clubs in hand. And they apologized to Antifa over it. Like we saw in the Chaz, when several men unloaded hundreds of rounds into an SUV, and then the extremists stripped the evidence from the vehicle, and none of those people are brought to justice. And now we are at the point where Project Veritas is having their private, privileged, legal communications leaked to the New York Times, who with a smile on their face violate all norms, all respect, and lack all scruples. And you think sitting back and complying will result in you getting by. You are wrong. I'm sick of this.
Preach.
So there you have it. Tim Pool talking about that entire scenario between the FBI, Project Veritas, New York Times, tying it in articulately with several other things going on in the country right now. And I just felt like I needed to share that with you all because it's very poignant, it's very relevant, and it highlights so much of what I try to talk about on here. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this sucker up. I think I've left you all with a lot to think about, and I certainly have a lot to think about and a lot to, I don't know. I don't want to say worry. I truly don't want to say worry because I do still feel optimistic about humanity, but I do think it does require those of us who are open-minded, who are free-minded, to continue to push, to continue to fight, to continue to stand up as individuals, as sovereign people, to fight this tyranny. And with that, until next time, you all, keep your minds free.